デスストランディング待たせたな
From sapiens to ludens, we are homo ludens, or those who play. From the moment we enter this world, we instinctively invent ways to have fun, and share our inventions with those around us. We are not asked to do this, nor do we need reasons to create. It is simply who we are. We find one another and compete with one another. We laugh together and cry together, all while playing together. Our experiences bind us and liberate us. To share our most valuable experiences, we create stories, invent tools, and evolve the art of play. Play has been our ally since the dawn of civilization. Playing is not simply a pastime, it is the primordial basis of imagination and creation. Truth be told, homo ludens, those who play, are simultaneously homo faber, or those who create. Even if the earth were stripped of life and reduced to barren wasteland, our imagination and desire to create would persevere beyond survival. It would provide hope that flowers may one day bloom again. Through the invention of play, our evolution awaits. Kojima Productions. We are homo ludens. We are those who play. Hideo Kojima. Hello everyone, my name is Tyson, and welcome back to my series, Kojima's Deception. What you've just heard is the mission statement of Kojima Productions, and it will be the foundation upon which the rest of this video will be built. This is likely going to be the most important video in the series, though Part 4 will be important for how it delves into the elements of social media, as well as Kojima's other connections. In this video, however, I'm going to try and mostly stick to things that are directly in the games, and how they could be potentially based in virtual reality, or more accurately, were built for a late recontextualization that completely reworks the perception of both the Metal Gear Solid and Silent Hill series. Before we go any further, all of the theories presented in the video are just that, theories. If you have a problem with a theory, make a comment that points out flaws and I will take the criticism to heart. Even then, please take into consideration that this series is entirely conjecture or speculation, whichever term you prefer, and more than that, it's made for fun. It's basically fanfiction. I don't consider any of this definitive fact, only potential outcomes of this clear ruse Kojima has set up. With that said, if you don't believe Kojima has a highly ambitious vision for Death Stranding that far exceeds what this or any other medium has accomplished, and that if not officially, it's spiritually Silent Hills, you probably shouldn't be here because you're clearly ignoring solidified evidence, with the paintings especially. You can fight against it all you want, but that's pretty clear to me that Kojima is still working with the same deck of cards that he started with. That location scouting has been utilized for Death Stranding, and that is no coincidence. Enough preamble. It's the time you've all been waiting for, the highly anticipated Part 3. If you're here, you probably should have watched the prologue, parts 1, 2, and 2.5 of the series. The side-up is important as well, like the rest of the main segments, as it does have information of its own. Though, if you have to skip any of the parts, I would recommend skipping Part 1 as it mostly recaps stuff from Python and Selkan. If you still feel like watching without catching up, don't let me stop you, but you're missing a lot of context I've already given. Anyway, the time has come. Roll the introductory segment.
washing at the blood tonight, and I've tried to give you what you want. What is it that you want? Despair, with not a word to say. A routine, red light, suggest or sit and burn alive. We'd rather burn fire, but I ain't gonna be here too long, too long. No, I ain't gonna be here too long, too long. No, I ain't gonna be here too
Yo, Kojima.
so good at fooling on, so good. We often fool ourselves. We think twice.
Well, yeah. I had a special surprise prepped and everything. But it looks to me like your hands are full. It's no biggie. You can always tweak the rules a bit.
Suggest or sit and burn alive. There's no wrong, there's no right, and I ain't gonna be here too long, too long.
didn't know it. And then came the next explosion. An explosion that will be our last. Yeah.
This is something that I touched on in my side op, but I'm going to go into great detail about here. It seems to me in Cypher that Kojima has not only decided that it's time to recontextualize the series for fans, but that he built the series with subtle hints that not all is as it seems. Clearly with the original Metal Gear, he didn't have this grand design in mind. He was just trying to make a game that not only was engaging, but took full advantage of the hardware of the MSX2. Kojima figured the best idea would be to avoid combat as it would prevent a large amount of sprites having to be drawn. As with games like Contra, what Konami was basically hoping for out of Kojima when they asked him to make an action game. Metal Gear 2 took the ideas presented in Metal Gear 1 and expanded greatly on them. Improved graphics, a story that took more than 17 minutes to tell, looking at you Kefka Productions, thank you for your movie edits, and some of the famous fourth wall breaks we saw in MGS1 were actually originated in Metal Gear 2. For instance, remember having to look at the back of the CD case in MGS1 for Meryl's codec frequency? That originated as a puzzle using tap codes in the manual to spell out the codec for Dr. Madnar. This is particularly interesting because he actually says, "Ah, I see you figured out my code." With this in mind, if Dr. Madnar is not only the man responsible for the many technological advancements in prosthetic limbs and robotics, but was it possible that he was also the mastermind who created the original engine the Copplethorne engine was based upon? And Copplethorne himself was someone who just stole the idea, similar to how Huey stole the idea for Peace Walker from Grannon, without crediting his source? Another comparison would be how despite the Copplethorne engine being used commonly in spin-offs, it was originally Kojima's idea. This would make him the architect of the simulation, similar to that of the Matrix movies. Kojima has expressed a fondness toward The Matrix, even going as far to say in an interview that the original Metal Gear Solid was like the first Matrix. Theoretically, the Copplethorne engine is the same engine that virtualized a world for Big Boss, and kept his will contained leading up to the events of MGS4. This explains why Dr. Madnar is still alive while looking as old as he did in Metal Gear 2, and why he surprisingly wasn't dead almost 20 years later by MGS4. His age isn't disclosed, but he was clearly already aged heavily by the time of Metal Gear 2. This would basically make Dr. Madnar the architect of the Matrix.
The Patriots are trying to protect their power, their own interests, by controlling the digital flow of information. I want my memory, my existence to remain. Unlike an intron of history, I will be remembered as an exon. That will be my legacy, my mark in history. But the Patriots would deny us even that. I will triumph over the Patriots and liberate us all, and we will become the Sons of Liberty!
Raiden, are you receiving? We're still here.
How's that possible? The AI was destroyed!
Only GW.
Who are you?
To begin with, we're not what you'd call human. Over the past 200 years, a kind of consciousness formed layer by layer in the crucible of the White House. It's not unlike the way life started in the oceans 4 billion years ago. The White House was our primordial soup, a base of evolution. We are formless. We are the very discipline and morality that Americans invoke so often. How can anyone hope to eliminate us? As long as this nation exists, so will we.
Cut the crap! If you're immortal, why would you take away individual freedoms and censor the net?
Jack, don't be silly.
Don't you know that our plans have your interests, not ours, in mind?
What?
Jack, listen carefully, like a good boy.
The mapping of the human genome was completed early this century. As a result, the evolutionary log of the human race lay open to us.
We started with genetic engineering, and in the end, we succeeded in digitizing life itself.
But there are things not covered by genetic information.
What do you mean?
Human memories, ideas, culture, history.
Genes don't contain any record of human history.
Is it something that should not be passed on? Should that information be left at the mercy of nature?
We've always kept records of our lives, through words, pictures, symbols, from tablets to books.
But not all the information was inherited by later generations. A small percentage of the whole was selected and processed, then passed on. Not unlike genes, really.
That's what history is, Jack.
But in the current digitized world, trivial information is accumulating every second, preserved in all its triteness, never fading, always accessible.
Rumors about petty issues, misinterpretations, slander.
All this junk data, preserved in an unfiltered state, growing at an alarming rate.
It will only slow down social progress, reduce the rate of evolution.
Right. You seem to think that our plan is one of censorship.
Are you telling me it's not?
You're being silly. What we propose to do is not to control content, but to create context.
Create context?
The digital society furthers human flaws and selectively rewards development of convenient half-truths. Just look at the strange juxtapositions of morality around you.
Billions spent on new weapons in order to humanely murder other humans.
Rights of criminals are given more respect than the privacy of their victims.
Although there are people suffering in poverty, huge donations are made to protect endangered species. Everyone grows up being told the same thing.
Be nice to other people.
But beat out the competition.
You're special. Believe in yourself and you will succeed.
But it's obvious from the start that only a few can succeed.
You exercise your right to freedom, and this is the result. All rhetoric to avoid conflict and protect each other from hurt. The untested truths, spun by different interests, continue to churn and accumulate in the sandbox of political correctness and value systems.
Everyone withdraws into their own small gated community, afraid of a larger forum. They stay inside their little ponds, leaking whatever truth suits them into the growing cesspool of society at large.
The different cardinal truths neither clash nor mesh. No one is invalidated, but nobody is right.
Not even natural selection can take place here. The world is being engulfed in truth.
And this is the way the world ends. Not with a bang, but a whimper.
We're trying to stop that from happening.
It's our responsibility as rulers. Just as in genetics, unnecessary information and memory must be filtered out to stimulate the evolution of the species.
And you think you're qualified to decide what's necessary and not?
Absolutely. Who else could wade through the sea of garbage you people produce, retrieve valuable truths, and even interpret their meaning for later generations?
That's what it means to create context.
I'll decide for myself what to believe and what to pass on.
But is that even your own idea?
Or something Snake told you?
That's the proof of your incompetence right there. You lack the qualifications to exercise free will.
That's not true. I have the right.
Does something like a self exist inside of you?
That which you call self serves as nothing more than a mask to cover your own being.
In this era of ready-made truths, self is just something used to preserve those positive emotions that you occasionally feel.
Another possibility is that self is a concept you conveniently borrowed under the logic that would endow you with some sense of strength.
That's crap!
Is it? Would you prefer that someone else tell you? All right then. Explain it to him.
Jack, you're simply the best, and you got there all by yourself.
Oh, what happened? Do you feel lost? Why not try a bit of soul-searching?
Don't think you'll find anything, though.
Ironic that although self is something that you yourself fashioned, every time something goes wrong, you turn around and place the blame on something else.
It's not my fault. It's not your fault.
In denial, you simply resort to looking for another, more convenient truth, in order to make yourself feel better.
Leaving behind in an instant the so-called truth you once embraced.
Should someone like that be able to decide what is truth?
Should someone like you even have the right to decide?
You've done nothing but abuse your freedom.
You don't deserve to be free.
We're not the ones smothering the world. You are.
The individual is supposed to be weak, but far from powerless. A single person has the potential to ruin the world.
And the age of digitized communication has given even more power to the individual. Too much power for an immature species.
Building a legacy involves figuring out what is wanted and what needs to be done for that goal. All this you used to struggle with. Now we think for you.
We are your guardians, after all.
You want to control human thought? Human behavior?
Of course. Anything can be quantified nowadays. That's what this exercise was designed to prove.
You fell in love with me just as you were meant to, after all. Isn't that right, Jack?
Ocelot was not told the whole truth, to say the least.
We rule an entire nation. Of what interest would a single soldier, no matter how able, be to us?
The S3 plan does not stand for solid snake simulation. What it does stand for is selection for societal sanity. The S3 is a system for controlling human will and consciousness. S3 is not you, a soldier trained in the image of Solid Snake. It is a method, a protocol that created a circumstance that made you what you are.
So you see, we're the S3, not you.
This puzzle, while using real tap codes for letters, just modified using numbers as well, making it alphanumeric, makes the puzzle possible. Without knowing that, this puzzle would be impossible to solve. I know I'm not the first to point this out, but it's important to bring up that Kojima was entering the real world all the way back in the second entry of the series. Truly a visionary in what video games could be. It becomes even clearer by MGS1 that things are not as they seem in the original Metal Gear and Metal Gear 2. Things aren't so grounded in reality. Sure, there's a giant robot, but in another reality. We could have had them too, hence their existence in Metal Gear Solid, a fictitious alternate reality based on our own timeline. Now, however, we have several events that aren't as easily explained away by science as much as they are in the rest of the series. Vulcan Raven's connection to ravens, Psycho Mantis's ability to jack into your mind, as well as telekinetic powers, Decoy Octopus's ability to absorb the DNA of victims and mimic the person using their memories and voice. None of this is explained. Then there's the famous codec fourth wall break mentioned earlier, Mantis reading your memory card, as well as having to plug in your controller into port 2 to take away his ability to read your shots. You can kill him without doing that, but where's the fun in that? It kind of just disregards the intent that Kojima was putting into the game, by putting you into the game. You're the demon that possesses Snake in all of the games. In a way, it's kind of cliche. The whole, in reality, humans are monsters thing. We've done much to poison our world via generations, which would also explain, for example, why Death Stranding seems to have very strong anti-pollution themes as a chiral mirror to what humans are doing in reality, in regards to our own creeping pollution problem. Hence several trailers of Dead Sea Life. As well as why in Metal Gear Solid, the original character, Raven, has that line where he says,
We'll play with him a little longer.
You would be wise not to underestimate him.
What did you think of him?
He is just as you said. In battle, he is as if possessed by a demon. Much like you, I would expect no less.
See?
Before we move on to MGS2, look at the UI, not just of this game, but of previous games as well. All of them are virtually identical, with the only real change being the color of the bar from red to a teal color. Doesn't this look like it's, a computer user interface in the 90s? There's also the inclusion of on-screen indicators for your equipment and weaponry, which looks yet again like a sophisticated computer interface. Also, remember that mind-jacking I mentioned from Psycho Mantis? In MGS1, there was a flash to white, then faded into the forced flashback. In Twin Snakes, however, they made it to where it fades to a TV screen static. Almost like you literally hacked into your mind in the Matrix as an entity similar to that of the Smiths, being able to take over anyone they choose, once the original had realized he could pretty much accomplish anything he wanted to being a part of the system. Granted, this wasn't fully realized in the first film, which is what heavily influenced MGS2, but MGS2 is where Kojima starts to make things really weird in terms of the paranormal. Granted, a lot of it is explained, either in the same game or in MGS4, but it was still highly odd upon a first playthrough without all of that context. Fortune's ability to deflect bullets, which ended up being a piece of tech that emitted high amounts of magnetic force to deflect bullets, which oddly enough didn't do anything to Knives or her railgun. Vamp's immortality, which ended up just being nanomachines, classic Kojima. Ocelot's replaced arm, donated from Liquid's dead body, possessing him turning out to be self-induced microgoja or brainwashing in simpler terms. It's all just very odd.
The nanomachines in his body cause his wounds to close and heal at an accelerated rate. Someone took the basic nanomachine technology I once researched and perfected it. In a sense, I'm responsible for Vamp. He's one of my sins.
On top of that, these seemingly unexplainable events being so simply explained could be explained as a case of Raiden's brain affecting the simulation by trying to rationally explain these strange phenomena. Speaking of simulation, that's the funny thing about MGS2. It outright explains that it is a simulation, and that none of what you're seeing except for a few choice characters are real.
It came as a complete surprise when Ocelot discovered the S3 data from GW. S3 stands for Solid Snake Simulation.
The S3 plan does not stand for Solid Snake Simulation. What it does stand for is Selection for Societal Sanity.
So you see, we're the S3, not you.
A simulated solid snake shaped by VR regimen. Sound like someone you know, Jack? I'm sorry to see you reduced to one of the Patriots' puppets. But I've made use of you, and their plan too. Solid Snake's sudden appearance, your arrival. It was obvious the Patriots were among my ranks. I had to smoke out the agent before the mission entered the final phase. You came in handy, as bait. Jack, those days during the Civil War were as real as they come. Every day was absolute, split between life and death. You ran from it. And now you've been led back to war by something less than real.
Raiden is held within the Copplethorne engine for the Patriots' experiment of social sanity, testing to see if a person can be fed a fictional dialogue and have them believe it. At the end, the GWAI reveals all of this to Raiden, and the fact that Event proves that S3 program was a success. This is where the S3 program was first implemented, and began erasing and changing information that we know as fact. This is why I had said in previous installments that by MGS4, the encyclopedia in the game is no longer a reliable source for all information, as you're reading information that has been modified for social sanity. I don't want to get off track though. Let's move on to MGS3, where the elements of virtual reality and even the inclusion of a series crossover began to get more and more suspicious.
Jack, I've got some important news. The head of the CIA has finally given us the green light for the virtuous mission.
Virtual mission?
No, the virtuous mission. The future of our Fox unit depends on it.
This line is going to be the springboard for this segment, covering MGS3. MGS3 has so many elements of VR that it's honestly quite mind-boggling that it's only recently that the series has begun to show cracks in the simulation. But perhaps that was Kojima's plan all along. Anyway, let's go into the elements of VR in MGS3. First and foremost, the UI has been drastically altered from previous entries. Instead of going for a single colored bar that changes depending on your health level, there's instead 2 white bars next to your character's codename, one indicating health, the other indicating stamina. The health bar no longer goes up from just eating rations as it did in previous games. Eating only affects stamina. Having high stamina is vital both for your slow regenerating health and for aiming accuracy. You could just consider this Kojima's focus on realism, but tell me, if we're going for realism, what the hell is life medicine? How does that work in reality? You could say it's a painkiller, but that's not what it's called, otherwise it'd just say something like morphine, and Kojima would probably have built in a toxicity system as well. No, instead he included the life medicine. This is mostly a set of training wheels for those who can't wait to heal during a firefight due to lacking stealth ability, but regardless, it is in the game as an item that removes realism. This is just the tip of the iceberg. Remember the UI I mentioned? Isn't it strange that they'd change it? I mean, if it ain't broke, well, don't fix it, right? Why remove color unless it's so low it turns red? Because it's an updated version of the Copplethorne engine. This UI change carries over to MGS4, though it can be customized in MGS4 unlike MGS3. On top of this, there are various elements of this game that aren't present in the other games. For instance, in all other MGS games, elements of the paranormal are just explained away, yet in this game there's exploding bosses, a field that turns from white to red, Vulcan's electricity manipulation, the Fear's cloaking, your cloaking, the Pain's ability to communicate with bees, all appearances of the Sorrow, especially where he's holding an active digital clock that appears like a hologram in front of him, the weird Guy Savage nightmare if you leave the game for a while and come back to it after being captured, a toy model of a frame from Zone of the Enders, as well as a Metal Gear Ray which supposedly didn't exist for another 45 years. All of this being unexplained points to post-traumatic stress disorder, hallucinations, and those affecting the simulation's perspective of what really happened, with exception of the Sorrow, but we'll get more into him later in Death Stranding. If you've watched part 2.5 and the side-op already, you'll likely know where I'm about to go with this, but I'm going to expand on it a little bit. I did want to point out something that many people may not know, which is that there are images both in MGS3 and later in MGS4 of certain moments that are important to Silent Hill lore, such as this picture that appears to be God's death. What's interesting about this is that Eva in MGS4 as Big Mama actually kind of resembles Dahlia Gillespie from Silent Hill. The question is, was this intentional? Was Kojima planting seeds for this recontextualization all the way back from MGS4, as he may have hinted in the MGSV debriefing video, which is still available on Konami's YouTube channel? In this side-op video, during the discussion of the Burger Meetup, I also mentioned that Robin Atkin Downes played various soldiers in MGS3, and that was his first role in the series. A theory I presented is that perhaps this was the inception of the idea of virtual reality, as Robin goes from being the voice you hear almost every supposedly Russian soldier, potentially even Johnny Sasaki with the infamous J right on his forehead. MGS2 Russians actually have Russian accents, to being the voice of your right-hand man in the form of Kazuhira Miller, the ultimate mindfuck, the system taking over your consciousness. There's also one thing that sticks out to me the most about this game in terms of VR. Ivan Rydinovich Rykov. You can't just say he's an Easter egg for the fans of MGS2 either. He is in the canonical story. You have to even disguise as him for a part of the game. What's strange to me about Rykov is that he genuinely looks identical to Raiden. Even the clones of Big Boss don't look exactly identical to him, with Liquid being naturally blonde, almost more resembling Kaz. Even further, there's a poster of MGS2 with Raiden on it, in his locker. This further ties MGS3 to MGS2's VR theme, potentially all being in virtual reality, Big Boss being forced to relive his past in the form of a nightmare, on repeat for years. To add on to this theory, it seems that Raiden has gone back in time, just as he did in Snake Eraser, to try and erase Big Boss from existence and prevent Solid Snake from ever existing. Perhaps in one timeline he fell for Vulcan, and that was the universe they ended up deciding to portray in MGS3. Perhaps he was brainwashed while in their custody, and he doesn't remember who he really is. Moving right along to MGS4, as mentioned, the UI has once again changed and been streamlined for modernization of the Copplethorne engine, but also has a few other things that just scream virtual reality to me. For instance, how the hell are you able to purchase items from Drebin when he's not directly near you? I mentioned in my side op, MGS4 has much darker themes than previous games, focusing on drab environments and the harshness of war, rather than the usual focus of stealth and survival. It definitely seems to be a jab at the ongoing conflict in the Middle East that's still raging on almost 20 years later. On top of this, all the bosses are basically retellings of previous bosses from MGS1, making Metal Gear Solid 4's Solid Snake's personal nightmare. Psycho Mantis being Screaming Mantis, Decoy Octopus being Laughing Octopus, Vulcan Raven being Raging Raven, and Sniper Wolf being Crying Wolf. They're all women too, which could be because of what the story says. Or it could be Snake's regrets of how he's treated the women in his life. Treating them like objects, manifesting them as the Beauty and the Beast unit, being highly erotic after removing their outer suits. Not to mention, in the first fight with Laughing Octopus, she is a shapeshifter, similar to Decoy Octopus, who we didn't get to see except in his false form of the DARPA chief, even seeing a glimpse of his face after Vulcan Raven goes to dispose of his body. One of the main mechanics of this fight is to discover where she's blending in, and one of the things she blends into is this painting, which while I couldn't point to a point in Silent Hill lore, it certainly has a Silent Hill feel to it. On top of that, all the other paintings in this building are just pictures of sheep and shepherds, which, if you think about it, kind of sounds like people in VR and their handlers. Huh. Before we move on to the V trilogy, I'd like to go over Peace Walker. Peace Walker is interesting because a lot of the things that people criticized about MGS-V actually originated here, and in many ways were improved upon in MGS-V. More than that though, I'd say it's actually a bigger gaping hole in the mask of lies that Kojima wears, disguising the series as anything but virtual reality. Before I go on, I'd like to make one correction from my side up. I had said that David pronounces Kaz as Kaz instead of Kaz throughout all of Peace Walker and Portable Ops, but there are occasions where he accidentally slips in Kaz instead of Kaz. Who knows why, but I figured I'd mention it just because I didn't want to be inaccurate about that. Anyway, as Python and Selkan have pointed out, there's a major discrepancy in the canon as far as what Kaz is aware of. In Peace Walker, at the end of the game, Kaz reveals to Big Boss that he knew who Professor Galvez and Paz were working for the whole time, but that according to him, he did it all for the good of Mother Base. This is where I started to distrust Kaz further, as in Ground Zeroes he clearly says, "I can't believe we ever bought that cover story," as though he never admitted to knowing their true identities. There's much more though. The elements of base management could be seen as a form of management training. The symbolism of Che Guevara could be seen as a form of mind control alongside all of the test signal slides. These are seen at the intro, and at a couple of points in the cutscenes. To me, this is almost the ultimate proof of being brainwashed, having images flashed in front of you while in a hypnagogic state of consciousness, hallucinating all of this within a simulation. To further drive this point home, there's both a false ending which seems to have happened in the simulation regardless of what happens with Paz later, being that there are tapes of Dr. Strangelove talking about the ghost in the machine as though the events actually happened. Driving this final nail in the coffin, during the sudden onset of the J-pop Metal Gear Zeke final battle, you can actually resist the feat of Metal Gear Zeke if you mash the action button fast enough. There's no physical way for this to happen. This is proof of a simulation. I don't even give a fuck. Big Boss was showing signs of post-traumatic stress disorder all the way back here in Peace Walker, as he has several flashbacks to the moment when he had to kill the boss under orders from the United States. On top of this, he was in denial most of the game about the true nature of her defection. Granted, he has a good excuse attempting to prevent the mammal pod from being completed, but that doesn't change even his own memories of the event not exactly lining up until after Strangelove pulls the truth out of him unwittingly through his silence.
There's a saying in the Orient,
loyalty to the end.
Do you know what it means?
Being patriotic.
It means devoting yourself to your country. As long as we have loyalty to the end, there's no point in believing in anything, even in those we love.
That's the way a soldier's supposed to think.
The only thing we can believe in, absolute certainty, is the mission, Jack. I'm defecting to the Soviet Union. Jack, you can't come with us.
I'd also like to discuss a scene that was cut from the non-Japanese release of Peace Walker, as I feel it's rather important to the plot. The sauna scene, yes, the infamous tape where Snake practically interrogates Kaz in the sauna naked, initially acting coy and unknowing about the sauna's uses, then utilizing it to extract information. Look at this shit.
Hey, won't you take your sunglasses off?
Oh, that's why it's so dark, huh? Boss? Is that you, Snake?
It's finished, huh?
What?
The new room.
Oh, the sauna?
It's not your style.
Huh?
I mean, isn't this a bit much? A sauna in Mother Base?
Boss, you were the one who approved it.
Yeah, I changed my mind during a mission. It's too expensive.
We've been through this before. We're using water from the ocean and saving energy. It's economic. And I thought since we have some Finnish soldiers on our side, that this might boost their morale. Hey, you want some soap? Catch.
No!
The sauna is popular with the staff, you know. You wait until it gets hot, and then you just pour out some water to create the steam. It's just like a Finnish sauna, and you can fit 20 people in here. So, Snake.
Yeah, I heard people have been injured in here.
Oh? That was just a bruise.
Just a bruise? I heard they won't recover for a month. Who was it anyway? I didn't get the full story.
Armadillo.
Were you here when it happened?
Oh, yeah. I mean, he just fell. You know, probably slipped on a bar of soap.
Slipped? Armadillo? Guy's built like a tank. He's got perfect posture. I've never seen him fall.
Yeah, well, he did fall. He fell, and all the birds that were resting on top of Mother Base went flying. Maybe he just got dizzy from all the steam.
I see. So the sauna made him fall, huh?
Boss?
Kaz.
Boss?
Is there anything you want to tell me?
About that, Snake. Are you going inside the sauna?
Sure. Lead the way. Show me how it's done.
Look at the steam.
That injury on your thigh.
Huh? What are you looking at?
Your whole body. Except the part you're covering with that towel. Kaz.
So this sauna is pretty refreshing. It beats all that dry tropical weather outside.
Yeah, so... Kaz, What are those leaves for?
They're called Vita. Leaves from Japanese white birch.
Vita?
You strike yourself with it. Like this. Stimulates blood circulation and gives you energy.
Let me see it.
Here.
This is good.
It was a bit too strong, boss.
Kaz, show me your back.
My back?
Yeah, get up and turn around.
Why, Snake?
Just take off the towel.
Snake? Where are you touching me?
It's not just your thigh that's injured. The injuries go all the way up to your ass. Looks like something clawed at it.
That's enough.
No, show me more. Turn around.
What?
Turn around.
Snake?
Kaz, are you popular?
Snake, where are you touching?
Do you remember? In the early days of MSF, you asked me how many women I'd had. Or were you really asking how many of them you could make yours?
Oh.
It's been 2 years, so how many new girls have you had?
This many. Approximately.
That many? You have such a busy life, yet you still find the time to keep yourself popular with the ladies. Look, I'm not going to control everyone's love affairs. That's your responsibility. You're a free man.
I would expect nothing less, boss.
Yeah, however, I also believe it's important to not set a bad example for the rest of the staff. You understand that, right?
You're getting a bit red, boss. Maybe I should...
Kaz, you're the sub-commander here. You should have a little more common sense.
What?
Gazelle came to see me after a mission. She wanted to talk. She's good looking, isn't she?
Yeah.
Did you do it?
Did she say we did it?
She said she saw you with Swan. Seems like a shame someone so good looking working in a place like this.
Oh, they both...
You came in here with Swan for a shower, didn't you? Just the two of you, alone.
That hurt!
So what's it going to be? Soap play, huh? Are you still blaming the soap? The steam?
It was just a...
Talk.
I'm sorry. It wasn't planned.
Wasn't planned? Armadillo saw you both, didn't he? Saw you with his girlfriend. And I'd say he was pretty surprised to find you both in here. Armadillo. So proud. Built like a tank. But then, he just lost his balance, right? Just happened to fall and the birds went flying, huh? Vita. Two-timer. What the hell were you thinking? Whatever happened to chivalry?
Snake!
To think I even have to give you this sermon.
I'm sorry. I'm a bad person, I get it.
Yeah, but it wasn't just them, was it? Dolphin, Puma. Do you want me to beat you for all of them, too?
I didn't do anything.
You son of a bitch. I'm gonna beat you down. Don't you move a muscle.
Boss, calm down. Dolphin, Puma, Gazelle,
You're treating them like animals and forgetting that they're people.
Wait!
Snake kick!
Please! Boss, neck!
Your body's hot.
You're hot too. I can feel it all over my body.
Doesn't it feel good being out here in the fresh air? Think about it seriously, Kaz. It's either women or us.
Both.
You bastard.
I'm just popular. What's wrong with that?
Nice punch. but it'll take more than that to take me down.
Impressive as always, boss.
What are you carrying there, Kaz? A Fulton recovery system. What do you intend to do with it?
How about a little flying, boss?
Listen, apologize to everyone. And try to be a little more careful.
Oh, okay.
And you're gonna clean the sauna for the next year.
Yes, boss.
Good. What are you all looking at?
Snake clearly doesn't trust Kaz 100%, so him supposedly being surprised about Paz and Professor Galvez's real identities in Ground Zeroes makes even less sense at this point. I wanted to back up to something I alluded to in the side-op regarding Huey Emmerich. It's possible that aside from his gross negligence of his child attempting to use him as a test subject for Sahelanthropus, as its cockpit was so small only a child could fit, that he really was innocent in the murder of Dr. Strangelove, who according to the Collector's Edition art book, was his wife. It is possible that he did indeed commit the murder, then commit suicide while floating aimlessly in the ocean on a life raft. And that would fit perfectly both with Hal's explanation of his suicide and even with the themes of Death Stranding, but I want to play the devil's advocate here for a minute. He was a scientist, but he likely had no real concept of raising children, hence his stupidity of even suggesting using Hal for testing. However, due to his condition being born without the use of his legs, and his cowardly nature, I severely doubt his capability to not only get her into the mammal pod, but also have the balls to kill her. She may have used him, and that would certainly be a motive, but she did also give birth to his only child, who he should have been there for. That was his biggest crime to me, was killing himself instead of being there for his son. At least in my eyes. I listened to all the tapes from Huey, Strangelove, Paz, and even the briefing with Peace Walker, but I found no evidence of anything else that really condemns Huey much other than being a bit of a cheat in terms of how he gets his success in robotics. I think his main issue is cowardice, hence suicide when faced with himself. This theory of traumas being manifested in the simulation doesn't just stop there, it keeps going. Leading into Ground Zeroes, I'd like to discuss Project Ogre. This paragraph was written directly by Cypher with some modifications by me for reading aloud, and does a great job of explaining what Project Ogre is seeming to be at this point. There's a Japanese folktale that's about a red and a blue ogre. When you think about it, Konami is the red ogre, a lonely, misunderstood beast who'd only had his brash instinct as a means of communication, in the end only wanting people to like him. However, due to the red ogre's nature, people feared him and despised him. Kojima, on the other hand, is the blue ogre, the friend of red ogre, or Konami. The ogre of thoughtfulness and serenity, cunning and resolution. The two ogres' opposites allowed them to become great friends, and Kojima was made vice president of their digital arm. Then one day, the blue ogre, Kojima, asked for his friend, the red ogre, to run him out of town. It was all the blue ogre's plan, and in the end, whilst the two stayed friends, the blue ogre left in isolation. In other words, Kojima formed his new studio leaving Konami, the red ogre alone again. The red ogre, curious of the blue ogre's absence, scoured the world day and night for his friend. As Python and Selkan have pointed to in some of their videos, namely the Ultimate MGSV analysis, it seems that Big Boss is stuck in this virtual purgatory, forced to relive memories extracted from his brain, as well as Grey Fox's. You can check out their videos covering the pictures, commissioned by Jordan Vogt Roberts, but I did a much more thorough job in part 2.5. I covered this picture which seems to be Grey Fox committing seppuku, a form of a warrior's death to retain their honor. In this picture, you can see the grids of the simulation confirming these theories unofficially, as well as it matching the scenery in MGSV, which Python and Selkan did point to. The simulation of MGSV seems to be based in the concept shown in the movie source code. Okay, that they made comparisons to where pilot Coulter Stevens has been lethally maimed and is living on life support through what initially seemed to be a virtual simulation connected directly to his brain. He's being made to go back into someone's memories, which turns out to be essentially a bridge to other realities, where now Coulter Stevens takes on the persona of Sean Fentress, a man who dies in 8 minutes from the memory of his death. At the end of the movie, Coulter is able to disable both of the bombs, stop the bomber, and create essentially a time paradox, but instead of that causing time and space to fold in on itself or just the simulation to end, it ends up creating an entire other reality. This is the same theory that is used to justify the pseudo-historical recreations such as Deja Vu and Jamais Vu, and the other side ops, that these events happened in a world created from paradox after paradox. Next, I'd like to share a few theories from Absolutely Nuclear on the NBGO subreddit. I tried asking him for permission and got no response, but I figure it's easier to ask for forgiveness than permission in this case since I didn't get a response for several months and the topic is actually over a year old. He'll get a link to it in a PM after this is up, and I'll explain that I did try and ask for permission several months ago, but never got a response and decided to make these findings more public as I feel it's not only important to the ruse, but to my audience who may not use Reddit. You'll find a link in the description for a full write-up. I'm personally finding myself going on it less and less lately, but it still is a great source of info for the ruse. Anyway, here it is, a 3-part write-up by Absolutely Nuclear. Enjoy. 1984 by George Orwell is one of Kojima's obvious inspirations for not only this game, but MGS2 as well. It is referenced repeatedly throughout the game, and its themes are used periodically throughout the series. But the specific theme I will be focusing on is the theme of what truth is. 1984 takes place in a dystopian London controlled by a government group called the Party. The main character in the story, Winston, works for the Party in the Ministry of Truth. For the Ministry, Winston has to rewrite things like news articles, books, etc. to fit the needs of the Party's current motivations. The Party can never be wrong. If a member of this society is caught against the interest of the Party, they erase that person. So it would be the Ministry of Truth's job to find all evidence of said individual and rectify all data to make it so this person never existed. The people would be forced to believe it because the Party is never wrong. Doublethink. Doublethink is the power of holding two contradictory beliefs in one's mind simultaneously and accepting the both of them. 2 + 2 = 5. The Party says this is the truth, there is no evidence that exists saying otherwise, and everyone else believes in it, therefore it is true. Any contradicting belief is independent of the Party, and therefore wrong. In the novel, the world is divided into 3 territories: Eastasia, Eurasia, and Oceania. London is part of Oceania. For the duration of the first half of the novel, Oceania is at war with Eurasia. Everyone believes and accepts this as fact. Halfway through, this truth changes. Oceania becomes at war with Eastasia. The Party changes the truth. The truth is they were always at war with Eastasia. There is a brief adjustment, but through doublethink, the people adjust and accept this truth almost instantly. The Party controls the truth. They attempt to eliminate all ways of disagreeing with them, and goes to extreme lengths, such as removing words from the dictionary. They cannot be proven wrong if the words don't exist to do so. Total information control. So who does this sound like to you in the Metal Gear Saga? Cypher. The Patriots AI wish to control the flow of information in MGS2.
Right. You seem to think that our plan is one of censorship.
Are you telling me it's not?
You're being silly. What we propose to do is not to control content, but to create context.
Create context?
The digital society furthers human flaws and selectively rewards development of convenient half-truths.
But what does that have to do with MGSV? which takes place in 1984. Think about something with MGSV. Despite there being a build-up to a war with Cypher, we never really see Cypher the whole game. We're not at war with Cypher, we're at war with XOF. The narrative of the game is tampered with. Every major plot device in the game has some capability to alter perception, manipulate the truth. Big Boss's mental health, the shrapnel horn, the third child, words to control the subconscious, parasite therapy. The skulls can literally control soldiers with them, but not Big Boss. Why? Think of all the crazy contradictions in the game.
I'm gonna rebuild it. I'm gonna make him give back our past.
There's no war with Cypher.
What about him? Yeah, took some shrapnel to the head.
Kaz looks directly at you, the medic, but needs to be explained by Ocelot that you are not Big Boss. He was right there, he should know this.
The real Big Boss is working separately from us to create his new nation. But until it's complete, we support the other Big Boss. The Phantom carries on his legend, his meme. That is Big Boss's plan.
Green soldiers, blue soldiers, Kaz is wearing sunglasses and ground zeros. Flashback to the otherwise. The downfall of Big Boss. Takes the moral high ground every time.
Still young.
You have plastic surgery. You don't have plastic surgery. Direct time contradictions. Just go along with him for now. Eliminate Skullface. The final piece that connects the series. More questions than answers. Almost no answers at all. This list never ends. This game is doublethink. Most people will play through this game and accept all these without a second question. It is us hardcore fans who crave the reality. The game starts with the tape and ends with that tape ending. The duration of that tape contains the entirety of the events that we see in the Phantom Pain. This tape contains the narrative, I'm theorizing, that Cypher wishes us to believe. One filled with contradictions, one that places Zero as an innocent bystander out to save Big Boss. The Phantom Pain is Cypher's truth. Metal Gear games tend to overload the player with information. There is so much information in the game that even single frames could hide details. Earlier games tended to shove all of the information into the player through extensive cutscenes. But this game is different. This game uses audio recordings, and the cutscenes cannot even be taken at face value. The pause cutscenes straight up are not real. The ending of the game contradicts the opening, and the flashbacks directly contradict Ground Zeroes. How the hell can we walk away with any sort of truth? I don't think we really can. But I believe this game does have a way of subliminally communicating with the player. Colors. Using colors in Metal Gear games is no new thing, particularly in Peace Walker. The good guys are titled in yellow, while the bad guys are titled in red. I believe this idea of communicating moral intentions through red and yellow is used in this game, particularly with the apparel and clothes. always around the neck for some reason. Kazuhira Miller in Peace Walker was yellow in the title and had a yellow kerchief. However, in this game, it is theorized that Kaz could be behind a lot of the bad things happening. We're never really shown this to be true. Eyes on Kazuhira. But look at his clothes. His tie switches from yellow in Peace Walker to red in the Phantom Pain. Ocelot has a red kerchief. Mother Base recruits have yellow necks. The soldiers are loyal and believe in Big Boss's vision. Angelic yellow lights appear in certain characters such as Big Boss, Huey, and Code Talker, particularly when they do nice things. Big Boss sparing the children, Code Talker helping Snake with the parasites, Huey standing his ground, Big Boss refusing to execute Huey. The Diamond Dogs logo is yellow, but in the files of the game there is a red Diamond Dogs logo, never seen in the game. I think this is a sign of things to come. The ending stanza of the game's theme, Sins of the Father, the sins never die, can't wash this blood off our hands. Let the world fear us all, it's just means to an end. Beyond of the truth, let me suffer now. This seems to imply Mother Base exerting its power to do some vile stuff, but we never see this. A bad-intentioned Diamond Dogs. I think it's coming. One more thing, with clothes. Huey has a colored tie, and Code Talker has a necklace that is neither red nor yellow, but green. I'll come back to this later. What I really want to talk about is using color to portray truth. Inspired by this post, and one of my earlier ones, I really started to look into this. In part 1, I compared the novel 1984 and the party manipulating truth to the possibility of Cypher manipulating the truth of what happened in this game, and that is a theory of mine. The truth is definitely being manipulated, but by who or what? There are many possibilities, and not necessarily exclusive to one of them. Big Boss is mentally ill. This will be what part 3 is about. He hallucinates and is aware of it according to the tapes. The shrapnel horn, yes, this is separate, can create pressure on his brain, causing him to misinterpret colors and hallucinate according to Ocelot. The third boy, Psycho Mantis, we know can insert illusions into people. Also, he is literally the first thing we hear. Parasites. The skulls use parasites to control soldiers, making them zombie-like. Also, in Shining Lights, your people act possessed. Ocelot's hypnosis. Words to control the subconscious, a topic I have no idea the extent of still to this day. I'll let you come up with your own interpretations of who or what is behind the false context for each individual's case. What I'm hoping to do is give you the key. The post a couple days ago I hyperlinked earlier pointed out blue as a color to symbolize the truth in many cultures, and that is the truth. We've been getting obsessed with colors lately, particularly with red and blue. Blue is used throughout the game, particularly in Ground Zeroes. The whole setting is blue. We usually set this as the basis for truth in many of our theories. Shrapnel horn, head injury, face burning, and the coma occurs. And that got me thinking. I posted about seeing a green effect during some of the cutscenes, thinking that it was a way to highlight things that were false. So I just connected the dots. Blue is true, green is false, right? When I commented on that guy's post, someone told me to go back and look if it appears during the pause cutscene, because we know those are not real. And that's exactly what I did. But I did not see green. I saw something else. Red. I get it now. Blue, green, red. Blue. Blue represents truth. Now let's get one thing straight real quick. When we look through these things, we have to be smart. For instance, a green blade of grass isn't going to mean something. We have to use our intuition to judge whether or not this game is trying to communicate something significant. When it is, the color usually takes up the entire screen, blooms the sides of the camera, uses it in articles of clothing in ways that stand out. We are mainly looking for when the color is having an effect on the camera. The game starts in blue. I wanted to try and use this color to prove that Skullface does not exist, but I just can't do it. The dogs bark at him, he has interactions with multiple things, he is at the beginning surrounded by blue-striped soldiers. All of the soldiers have blue stripes, not a single green one. This is significant. Enter Big Boss, where he rescues Chico and Paz under the destruction of Mother Base, and the narrative cuts off at the supposed helicopter crash. We wake up in the phantom pain with what we are told from a coma, hypnosis, brain damage, shrapnel, and a whole lot of lives take place. Most of the phantom pain narrative is tampered with, but there are some uses of blue that I think could communicate true events. Most of the conversations that happen in the torture scenes, rescuing Shabani, and his interactions with Skullface rescuing Code Talker, the construction of battle gear, the scene with the blue-striped soldiers after the awkward Jeep ride, Skullface escapes with the blue-striped soldiers, and Sahelanthropus. The butterfly wings on the peace symbol. Peace is the truth. Red. Some of the negative symbolisms of red are obvious. Anger, revenge, malice. So how many times am I going to talk about red in this post? I used it earlier for symbolizing evil intentions, so now I'm using it again for lying? Well, think about this. The red characters, Kazuhira, Ocelot, Eli, his hat, are the characters that ritualistically lie.
They do something to your eyes? No, it's just bright as all.
He is most likely behind the quarantine platform and the children's escape given the dialogue. Eli holds the third strain and hates you. Ocelot lies in every single game he is in, the whole time. Lying and bad intentions are pretty synonymous, so where does red come up? We know Paz still being alive is a lie. We know the tapes lie to us. We know the helicopter crash is a lie given how we see Big Boss looking out of the chopper after the explosion with his burnt face. So, when are some of the other times that this happens? One thing I always wondered is why Huey seems to be speaking for Cypher during his first torture session. Skullface is allegedly directly against Cypher here. He says Cypher is pursuing new research, not Skullface. But we saw Huey and Skullface interacting. Look at the strangeness of how red is used during this particular scene. It keeps piercing into the camera as Skullface yells at Huey. I don't think Huey was ever with Skullface. I think it was all a lie. I think he was with Cypher. Some other examples of red. Shining lights. Why is Huey so upset that you are killing your own men when they're going to die anyway, or even worse, get everyone else infected through the crows? I think the context of this mission is an outright lie, and what really happened is much darker. The AI pod saying it's not you, the intro quote about parasites. Red represents outright lies. Things that did not happen. Also, as I said before, be careful what you interpret. Red is present during the torture scenes, but they illuminate the characters rather than having the effect on the camera. It's meant to highlight the darkness of the torture, I'm assuming, not show that it is a lie. Finally, green. Some of the negative symbolisms of green are sickness, illness, poison, or venom. And even illusions. And that is it. If blue is true and red is lie, then these are polar opposite. But green fits right in the middle, the convenient half-truths. The event is happening, but something is wrong or tampered with.
It's easier to live a convenient lie than a painful truth.
His tie is green. He tells you the truth, but he twists it to fit himself in the position of innocence. He tells you all about the research, but avoids talking about Strangelove or using his son as a test subject. Convenient half-truths. Code Talker assists you with the parasites, but avoids the fact that he wanted to use it to kill those who took his language, and also how Quiet was infected. He left out the part that incriminates him. Green is absolutely everywhere in this game. Here is how it happens. During a cutscene, everything could be fine, but a green tint will appear and fade depending on what is happening. Usually at the bottom edge of the screen. I believe this green tint is what highlights the half-truths. The phantoms, the convenient lies. The event is happening, but something is distorted, messing up the context we walk away with. Here are a few examples. I talked about Huey's relationship with Skullface, and how I think he was never actually involved with him. He mentions Skullface in the tapes, but I don't trust the tapes. We know they lie because of the pause tapes. There is a time when Ocelot asks Huey about Skullface in interrogation, but watch it closely. The second Skullface comes out of his mouth, the bottom of the screen lights up in green. What this is suggesting to me is that this means yes, Huey is being interrogated, but instead of it being about Skullface, it is about something else, like Zero or Cypher. But the scene is distorted in some way. Green tints show up only in cutscenes. Some examples are the conversation between the big boss with Ocelot at the end of the game, pretty much every scene with Ishmael, the mirror scene at the end, Skullface with Big Boss at the helicopter, Skullface Major I'm Burning Up scene, right after we see him escape with the blue soldiers, the shooting off of Skullface's limbs, Huey's second interrogation, Ocelot rescuing you and taking you to the boat, the second pause cutscene, and I found this odd because it's the specific one where Ocelot talks about internal timeline conflicts and filtering out things that disagree. I think the game is trying to say that there is some truth to this scene. Pause is obviously the distorted part, so he very well could be, in the real context, talking about Big Boss. The running theme of my series of posts is truth. What is true and what is a lie? This post will build off of my previous part, which talks about the usage of colors to communicate with the audience, basically through the usage of red and blue. Just a fun thing I realized. The classic movie The Matrix used red and blue to symbolize true and false. Will you take the red pill or the blue pill?
This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. Remember, all I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
So in The Matrix, red is used to symbolize the truth, while blue is actually used to symbolize lies. Well, for this game, that is reversed, or mirrored if you want to stay with the game's themes. Red stands for lies, while blue symbolizes the truth. I won't be talking about red in this post, but blue and green. In the last post I said that green could be used to symbolize illness, sickness, and illusion. Keep that in mind. I always wondered if there was something in Ground Zeroes that we missed. Skullface is usually surrounded by his XOF soldiers, which either have green or blue stripes on their back. Why? At the start of the game, Skullface is surrounded by the blue-striped soldiers. Every single one of them is blue, not one green-striped soldier. Then Big Boss, one who hasn't yet been blown into a coma or hit in the head with shrapnel, climbs up a cliff and into a black site. He rescues both Paz and Chico and returns to Mother Base. Mother Base is engulfed in flames, and a fight is going on between presumably Cypher and Militaire Sans Frontiere. When Big Boss arrives, the soldiers that he is fighting against visibly have blue stripes on their helmets. Big Boss arrives on the scene and picks up Miller and a mysterious triangle soldier. Let's analyze this a little bit. In the menus of Ground Zeroes, we see a balaclava soldier sitting behind Big Boss, just behaving all mysterious. Well, that soldier is Soldier 25, but Soldier 25 dies in the Battle of Mother Base. Why put so much focus on him? The running theory here is that he is a red herring for the triangle soldier that makes it onto the helicopter and is never heard of again. There is a problem with the triangle soldier though. There is more than one of them. Assuming that one makes it to the chopper and is pulled in by Miller as the same one in the screenshot from earlier, then there is at least two. If he is so unique and significant, why is there more than one soldier with that marking? I'm thinking he is not as special as we want him to be. Okay, look at the general placement of the enemy soldiers real quick. Remember that crane that falls and capsizes the strut? It landed pretty much right on top of them, so they should mostly all be dead. The usage of green and red. Some of your soldiers during that fight have green grenades on their backs, while others do not, such as our favorite triangle soldier. Our buddy, number 25, has green grenades on his back, and it is shoved straight in your face before he dies. Remind you of anything? Now look at Miller when 25 gets shot. This footage is slowed down so you can see better. He pulls the triangle soldier in, but doesn't seem to react to a guy dying just inches away from him. He even looks away as if his guard is down. And that's just it. Soldier 25 is significant because he doesn't exist. 25 gets shot, and Big Boss turns, screams, and starts shooting at a surprisingly large amount of enemy soldiers. All had you perfectly in their sights, and no one else to shoot at, so they should have had you. Miller urges Big Boss to get into the helicopter, and Big Boss turns around and gets pulled in by Miller, the soldiers he was shooting at, and the bodies on the ground. Why do they suddenly seem to be gone when the camera turns back around, towards the strut less than 10 seconds later? There was 7 of them, and 3 bodies. Now, your brain will tell you that they fell into the water. But wait a second, look at the way the strut is sinking. I sped that up so you can actually see the direction better. The strut is falling towards the direction of the helicopter. In other words, those soldiers should be falling towards the helicopter, so it's really hard to explain their sudden disappearance. I don't think these soldiers exist either. But if that's not enough proof, it gets even better. Alright, on the strut there is a container on your side of the platform. A cargo container. Take a look. Like the ones we spend a lot of time extracting in the Phantom Pain for resources. It's clearly a cargo container, and it's clearly made out of solid material. Keep your eyes on the container on the left side of the screen and watch this. I slowed this footage down so you can see it better. You thought they came around the corner, didn't you? They just straight no-clipped through that damn wall. There is solid proof that these soldiers are fake. Now, I tried to find one instance of these soldiers having green stripes on the back of their head, but I couldn't find it. I'm pretty confident this is the case. The helicopter that crashes into you has these soldiers in there too. But they phased right through solid material once, why not again? So what does that mean? Following my prediction of green symbolizing illness and illusions, I believe these soldiers are hallucinations. Phantom soldiers hiding in plain sight. Even sometimes alongside real ones. So I am suggesting that the green striped soldiers in MGSV are hallucinations, while the blue striped soldiers are real. The blue ones can be seen talking and interacting with things. That mission where you meet Skullface on the helipad, all the soldiers are green, not a single blue one. The third child appears. The bottom of the screen is green, too, until he does that weird voice hypnosis thing. That whole Jeep ride is eerie. I think the ride is some crazy delusion. And at the end, I think Skullface whispers into your ear and triggers a flashback to a previous moment in the timeline. That would explain why the striped soldiers switch from green to blue, and then we have the fight with Sahelanthropus. Ground Zeroes. What is the significance of it? Ground Zero. What does that mean? Well, no nuclear bombs went off according to Wikipedia. Generally, it is also used in relation to earthquakes, epidemics, and other disasters to mark the point of the most severe damage or destruction. First off, if Big Boss is hallucinating in Ground Zeroes, and the protagonist is hallucinating in the Phantom Pain, doesn't that kind of imply that the protagonist could be one and the same? At first, the idea that the ending of We Are the Medic not being true was fought like nothing else, but I think we are slowly coming around to it. Just yesterday, someone posted those icons hidden in the files. Venom Snake has the 3-strapped eye patch, whilst Big Boss has the 2-strapped eye patch. Venom Snake smokes the Phantom cigars, whereas Big Boss only smokes the real ones. Venom has shrapnel, Big Boss does not. so we must be the medic. Whoa, 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 hold the phone, cut the video. So I'm not really sure where I fall on who we're playing as. Just a reminder, I'm still reading the 3-part write-up from Absolutely Nuclear, and this was posted in March of 2016. There's various theories that have surfaced since then, 3 of which I really believe are possible. We are Gray Fox, aka the medic who saved Big Boss. We are Big Boss experiencing a distorted memory from Gray Fox. Or Venom Snake is just a figment of Big Boss's imagination, spurred by the PTSD and the shrapnel in his brain, which may also be a delusion of the system caused by his PTSD that makes him appear as a demon. Anyway, I'm going to read the rest of this unaltered, but I just wanted to make that clear that I don't know where Kojima is going to, if he's even planning to, continue the Venom Snake saga. Also, if you zoom in on the window, you see your avatar. So, we know we see things that aren't real in the game. That icon shows the real Big Boss with shrapnel, and that insinuates that we could indeed be playing as the real Big Boss the whole time. First trailer shows a 2-strapped Big Boss with shrapnel, and his phantom limb driving off the motorcycle, similar to the way the Truth mission ends. Well, so what? Kojima has just switched the character models to avoid spoiling the ending. Maybe. And the icon is just a reference to an earlier version of the game. Maybe. But why put all this effort into showing that Big Boss hallucinates in Ground Zeroes so sneakily that no one even noticed, if we are going to play as someone else entirely anyway? What about the shrapnel? First off, if we use Ground Zeroes exclusively, we can't see anyone get hit with shrapnel. Big Boss gets his face burnt, the medic falls over probably dead from the shock. Kaz hovers his hand over his face. No shrapnel can be seen hitting anyone. And then we have footage of Big Boss looking out of the chopper after receiving those burns from the explosion. But that's an impossibility unless the chopper never crashed, and bingo, there it is. The helicopter isn't there. It is a hallucination, and the true reason as to why Big Boss has shrapnel hasn't been revealed yet. There is a missing piece. So my interpretation of Ground Zeroes is that there is a catastrophic event that happens to Big Boss, a ground zero for him. That event is not the chopper crash, because it never happens. The event, the ground zero, is the destruction of Mother Base. Big Boss spent all that time building up his nation only to witness it get destroyed. The extreme amount of stress causes him to have a psychotic break, and he sees hallucinated soldiers and even shoots at them. Look at Big Boss after he gets pulled back into the helicopter by Miller. He looks as if he's completely lost it. I believe Big Boss has a violent onset of schizophrenia, a mental illness that is named to mean split mind, a split from reality. I think the V symbolizes that split. Positive symptoms of schizophrenia include hallucinations, delusions, thought disorders. Some negative symptoms include flat effect, reduced emotion and facial movements and the tone of voice, monotone, alogia, speaking very little, lack of motivation, and problems with memory. Who does that sound like to you? Big Boss doesn't talk very much in The Phantom Pain. There are pills that look like antipsychotic drugs scattered on the table in the opening. The song that plays multiple times, The Man Who Sold the World, is a song often interpreted to be about schizophrenia. We know he hallucinates Paz and her tapes, so I think Big Boss becomes very mentally ill. And we play as that same mentally ill Big Boss in The Phantom Pain. There can only be one Big Boss. Screw the damn medic. Now add this to whatever causes him to get shrapnel in his head, Psycho Mantis's illusions, exposure to parasites, possible hypnosis and brainwashing by Cypher. What the hell is a reliable source of information in this game then? I have no idea. I think the colors might be there to help, but I still can't say for sure. I think there's a very good chance though. I might have gotten some or all of that wrong, and I hope you guys look deeper into it. One last thing to connect to part 3 with part 1. A theory I have is I think that you waking up in the hospital is one of the latest parts of the timeline, not the beginning. We wake up in that hospital that is owned by Cypher. This info is from the truth tapes, which I think are riddled with lies, but I think it's a safe assumption. It's in England, there's a statue of the boss who influenced Zero, the leader of Cypher, Cypress even sounds like Cypher. I don't think they were keeping you there out of the goodness of their hearts. At some point, we got kidnapped by Cypher. They sure as hell didn't rescue us from a chopper crash that never happened. So what did they do to us if there is no second Snake? I think they brainwashed us by removing themselves from our recollection of events from the timeline of the game. That's why there are so many contradictions. Who walks away with the image of innocence? Cypher. When Huey tells you his involvement, who does he make it sound like is innocent? Himself. When Code Talker tells you about the parasites, he leaves out the darkness of the original intentions for the parasite, leaving you with an image of innocence for Code Talker. History is written by the victor, and Cypher is writing the story, the true narrator, the innocent party. Then we enter into a contradiction-filled plot and possible timeline jumps. But it's total information overload. There's no way I can figure this game out, no matter how much time I spend with it. It's been 6 long months and I keep coming back here because that's how damn good this game is. At least for me. I am at the level of investment that this game I've never experienced before. This search for truth and the search for Chapter 3. I need you guys and this place to help me do that. And that's what I think this experience is. I can't speak with any authority over any of the things I've seen in the game. I can only really point my finger at what I see. I noticed the colors, and I noticed the soldiers warping through the walls, and I tried to interpret their meaning. Feel free to totally disagree with my interpretations, but I did the best I could. And now after 3 days worth of typing, sifting through cutscenes, posting screenshots and videos, I am exhausted. I hope you can get something out of these posts, even if you disagree entirely. I put a lot of effort into this, and now it's time for my piece. A rest from investigating and typing. I hope you guys can make more out of what I found. Alright, now that that's done. As far as the theory of colors, I wanted to mention that I don't necessarily think that calling blue the truth and red lies is 100% definitive, as he had said at one point regarding the torture sequences. I think the red also points to manipulation and control and dread. The tape players all having it with exception to the cassette deck for the MSX2 at the end. And the intro level having a ton of red in the form of the man on fire, whom I'll refer to as Fire Vulcan for brevity's sake from now on. Sure, he's a hallucination, but that's definitely dread, not just a hallucination. On top of this, I believe that blue also represents lies in certain contexts because Ground Zeroes I do not believe happened exactly how it seemed. Like I had said, Paz was fairly badly burned after the explosion when she was defeated piloting Metal Gear Zeke. I really highly doubt that 1, she survived, 2, that she would have had no scars, and 3, that she survived that fall. That was... God, anyone, especially head first with no preparation, would have died from that because it would have been like hitting concrete. Now that that's done with, I'd like to reflect a bit on a couple of points by Python and Selkan. If you haven't watched it already, you should watch this video in the card, talking about Kazuhira and Skullface, and that they may have been working together from the start, which would explain the hallucination Venom has near the end of the game, where he turns around. Miller is suddenly Skullface, and then back to Miller. Miller still carries Skullface intentions, and not only was the act of killing him a lie, but it was empty in the simulation as killing him really accomplished nothing. On top of this, there's also the fact that the iDroid not only doesn't appear to create holograms in the standard sense, more like a plane in a simulation floating above an object. The voice is also audible when you first wake up in the intro saying V has come to, before you even have your iDroid. Python and Selkan also pointed out that this was Donna Burke, the singer who did the song Heaven's Divide for Peace Walker and Sins of the Father for MGS-V, was also the voice of the iDroid. On the MGS-V Ultimate Analysis, they mentioned that she revealed in the comments of another one of their videos that she did stations too, meaning that she also read off the Japanese train stations. Similar to Miller being used as the main soldier voice you hear throughout MGS3, potentially being a meta-narrative of the simulation taking over your consciousness in the form of Miller. Didn't you think that it was weird that these Russian soldiers had American accents even though MGS-V, and even MGS-2 for that matter, made sure to have proper Russian accents or just speaking Russian when dealing with Russian soldiers? The Diamond Dogs logo being at OKB0 was no coincidence. The Diamond Dogs are working in conjunction with XOF as Absolutely Nuclear had pointed it to, under Miller's orders no less. Perhaps Miller and Skullface are two of the people in charge of the simulation. Or perhaps it's just Skullface, and Miller is a projection of Skullface, particularly when he's the gravelly Miller, who is much darker than Miller ever got in Peace Walker. Or Ground Zeroes for that matter. That's not all. Kaz has basically been proven alongside Big Boss to be involved with the torture at Camp Omega. He said something that cut right through me. Nothing to be ashamed of. Pain gets the better of us all. And give her the shot already. It seems to me that Big Boss is blocking out a lot of memories of how he turns into the villain of the series, or more accurately, as Absolutely Nuclear points out, it seems more like Cypher is blocking the truth from being revealed. A couple of comparisons I'd like to make with Silent Hill from MGS-V is that Volgin is similar to Pyramid Head, and that he appears to be Venom's manifestation of his own demon. Just like Pyramid Head represents the hate and malice in James Sunderland's heart, Volgin is a reminder of the many men he's killed on the battlefield, and the hole in his heart that will never be filled from his men being taken from him by XOF. The other comparison I'd like to make is that when you get to a fight with the Skulls and the mist is taken over, the radios are suddenly affected and start to play clips from PT, such as the radio broadcasts about the father killing his family, the Swedish warning of aliens, and the music that accompanies this broadcast.
As the congressional debate over gun control flares up yet again, we regret to report the murder of a wife and her 2 children by their husband and father. The father purchased the rifle used in the crime at his local gun store 2 days earlier. This brutal killing took place while the family was gathered at home on a Sunday afternoon. The day of the crime, the father went to the trunk of his car, retrieved the rifle, and shot his wife as she was cleaning up the kitchen after lunch. When his 10-year-old son came to investigate the commotion, the father shot him too. His 6-year-old daughter had the good sense to hide in the bathroom, but reports suggest he lured her out by telling her it was just a game. Over gun control flares up yet again. We regret to report the murder of a wife and her 2 children by their husband and father. The father purchased the rifle used in the crime at his local gun store 2 days earlier. This brutal killing took place while the family was gathered at home on a Sunday afternoon. Don't touch that dial now, we're just getting started. Retrieved the rifle and shot his wife as she was cleaning up the kitchen. You can't trust the tap water. When the son came to investigate the commotion, the father shot his.
Kan du vara din egen chans? Låt oss välja. Min röst som förtäljer framtiden, eller dina klådade. Nå, vad väljer du? Du kan välja. Ditt liv, din framtid. Tror jag, så kanske du redan upptäckte. Ja, radiodramat från 75 år sedan var sanning. De är här på ord. Och de övervakar och ser allt. Lita inte. Lita ej på huset. De är redan kontrollerade av dem. Så har det varit i 75 år nu. Endast vårmästaren kan få dem. Du har en rätt. En rätt att bli en av oss. Så välkommen till vår värld. Mycket snart öppnas portarna till en ny dimension. 2048 63. 2048 63. Dad was such a drag. Every day he'd eat the same kind of food, dress the same, sit in front of the same kind of games. Yeah, he was just that kind of guy. But then one day he goes and kills us all. He couldn't even be original about the way he did it. I'm not complaining. I was dying of boredom anyway. But guess what? I will be coming back and bringing my new toys with me. Dad was such a drag. Every day he'd eat the same kind of food, dress the same, sit in front of the same kind of games. Yeah, he was just that kind of guy. But then one day he goes and kills us all. He couldn't even be original about the way he did it. I'm not complaining. I was dying of boredom anyway. But guess what? I will be coming back and bringing my new toys with me.
This tells me that Kojima was definitely transplanting elements of Silent Hill into Metal Gear, which is why Death Stranding's fog has to look so amazing. One more thing I wanted to go over before moving on to Survive, since not many theorists seem to want to touch it, is that to me in Cypher, it seems that the reason that Kojima is hidden from us regarding Quiet being clad in underwear and fishnets isn't just because she subsides on photosynthesis, but also that she is a projection of the simulation. She could be created by the creator as a love interest for Venom, a sort of woman in the red dress from The Matrix.
So I understand that you've run through the agent training program. You know, I wrote that program.
Here it comes.
So what did you think of her?
Of who?
The woman in the red dress. I designed her. She, well, she doesn't talk very much, but if you'd like to meet her, I can arrange a much more personalized meal.
What seems equally possible to me is that she's a projection of Big Boss's subconscious, desiring women in skimpy clothing. This could be because he's obsessed with Eva, trying to essentially get her back, but that's definitely speculation. I'm not going to say that that's fact whatsoever. The final piece of the V trilogy, Metal Gear Survive. The bastard child Konami shat out to the world after Kojima supposedly had been disgraced by them. With the idea of it all being a ruse, Metal Gear Survive becomes a lot more interesting. There are many hints that not only VR, but this potentially being the second to last piece of Project Ogre. Remember the Japanese folktale I mentioned earlier? Guess what colors Virgil AT9 uses for the two personalities within it? Blue and red, which merges into pink after killing the Lord of Dust, alluding that blue and red were the same all along. Or that everything is a lie. This brings me back to Ground Zeroes, which I wanted to discuss. I don't think that Ground Zeroes was the events as they were. I think it's probably closer to PythonSelkan's analysis, stating that it seems to be Gray Fox's memories re-experiencing the Camp Omega incident with altered contexts, i.e. the helicopter crash that never happened, and likely finding a living pause which clearly never happened after the end of Peace Walker with how burned she was from the explosion, as mentioned. There was no way that she lived through that. Back to Survive. Virgil AT9 is a reference to James Cameron's The Abyss, a movie about a team of deep-sea divers with advanced ocean diving equipment being tasked by the United States government to aid in the removal of nuclear warheads from a downed submarine. This was made in 1989, and the main character's name is Virgil. Now, why is that interesting? Well, the Abyss intro shows a descent down an abyss, and that happens to go down the Y, as it is designed stylistically to be menacing. I feel that Kojima using a V, besides from intending to mean virtual reality, also resembles the split in reality that Big Boss goes through, as Absolutely Nuclear alludes to. There's many allusions to not only religion, but also dreaming within Metal Gear Survive. This has been discussed somewhat by PythonSelkan, but I don't feel that they went deep enough. Dite itself is the name to Hell, given in Dante's The Divine Comedy. Karenkor is also taken from the same, and is the ferryman who carries departed souls to the afterlife. These names were given by Goodluck, who turns out to be Chris, the handicapped kid from Survive. What's interesting about this is that he was expecting to go back to the year 1980, but ended up in 1943, at the height of World War II. This is the beginning of the end right here. Remember that cyclical time war I mentioned in the side op, where technology from the future goes back in time and gets reverse engineered by those in that time, creating factions from separate times, warring across time and space, tearing the universe apart? If you don't, now might be a good time to at least watch up to the end of part 1 of that video. After that, I focus on a write-up by a guy named Joe Drinks Beer, which I still think is possible, and part 3, which was focusing on the burger meetup. In hindsight, I agree with a comment that I got, which is that parts 2 and 3 probably should have been their own video, but I was basically intending for it to be the Ruse News, but I just didn't want to call it that. Anyway, that's exactly what happens in Survive. Chris goes into the wormhole, ends up in the 40s, reverse engineers the iDroid given to him by the captain, and is able to advance tech at an alarming rate. Another thing I wanted to discuss that Python and Selkan mentioned is that the iris energy needed to open the wormhole, a wormhole that's blue, seems to be a metaphor for opening our eyes, just as the Phantom Pain debut trailer beckoned us to do. Wake up. Open your eyes already. Think about it. With all I've said, wouldn't it make sense that Survive is the bridge to Death Stranding from Metal Gear? It's no longer Metal Gear Solid, it's Survive, which alludes to horror and has horror themes. Check this out. This is a famous, or infamous depending on who you ask, clipboard from Survive that was so newsworthy due to a not so subtle jab at the director and a last hurrah for former Koji Pro staff. There's an interesting detail though that not many have talked about. It was noted 9 months ago on NBGO. There's more detail in the texture file that isn't shown on the clipboard itself. Detail on the left-hand side near the bottom are 2 Japanese words. Kankaku means sense or sensory. Interesting considering dooms and the brainwashing. And the other happens to be one of the 5 Japanese cities that merged into the seaport of Kita-Kyushu. Interesting considering Bridges theoretically is 5 United Cities of America, which I theorize are the following. LA because of the importance of Hollywood in American culture, New York City because of how massive and influential it's been around the globe, Seattle for its cultural impact being one of the most popular locations to record music in America, Houston because Houston we have a problem as well as it being massive in size, and DC because obviously the heart of the former government should be included for its significance. Along with all of that mentioned, there's also the obvious water in the sky and the hidden weird alien fish things in the sky at certain areas. Hell, you can even see clear MSF logos all over Mother Base before it crashes, yet when you wake up in D-Tay, you're greeted to a distorted version of the Diamond Dogs called Dead Dogs. Almost alluding as if there is yet to be another destruction of Mother Base, or the destruction of Outer Heaven with the data-mined red Diamond Dogs logo. Chapter 3 may come out, but I'm not holding my breath for that the way I am for the potential tie-in to Metal Gear and Silent Hill for Death.
An explosion. That will be our last.
So it's pretty clear to me in Cypher, as well as many of you all, that Death Stranding will likely be taking place in virtual reality due to various elements already mentioned in my prologue, part 2, and the side-op. It becomes even harder to deny when looking at the man in the golden mask summoning a chimera out of his mask, in a way that looks like either magic or some form of electricity manipulation, almost as if he's materializing creatures out of nanomachine particles that this virtualized reality is likely comprised of. What if I told you that Death Stranding's protagonist seems to be pulling an MGS2, and then we may not play as Norman Reedus, but either Léa Seydoux or Lindsay Wagner, more likely with Lindsay Wagner. It would be highly interesting to play, especially considering Dr. Strangelove's explanation of why she chose to use the boss's mind as a model for the mammal pod, which I believe to be the basis of Cypher's 5-layer AI control system that resulted in the S3 project.
We have a visitor. I'll introduce him. Don't try anything foolish. As long as we're in here, I can reduce you to carbon at the press of a button. Who are you? A man. A warfighter.
Boss, is that you?
I call it the mammal pod.
Mammal pod?
For my participation on the project, I demanded access to all information on the boss. Everything the CIA had. Coldman sought an MAD-based AI that would deliver an effective retaliatory strike against the most appropriate target in response to a nuclear attack from a hypothetical adversary. An unmanned device to act as a deterrent capable of making the decisions and taking the actions that human beings cannot. I therefore concluded he required a cool calculating machine, programmed to inflict swift, sure, and utter annihilation upon the enemy. No retaliation, but he took it upon himself to come up with a different answer. He said he needed the thought patterns of the very finest rational mind, one that thought on a global scale, took both past and future into consideration, and reached the best decision, no matter how painful.
And that's why you asked for everything they had on the boss.
It was the logical thing to do. I knew of only one person who could be entrusted with the fate of the entire human race.
What's your real goal here?
To clear her name. Why was a legendary hero forced to betray her country? Why was she targeted for assassination by you, her most beloved disciple? I have no use for fabrications. I want the truth. The boss's last will.
As well as this, Kojima did mention wanting to make a game about the boss in World War II. So having this distorted timeline would honestly fit even better and be much more fitting in the series, if I do say so myself. Plus, I don't really know how they would gamify the boss's disgrace constantly. What would she do in space? Fucking crash the shuttle? Fucking, I don't know. Speaking of the S3 project, remember the series of characters on the ACC wall that read out E523? It might mean Omega, as in from Zero to Omega, implying Zero's rise to godlike status by digitizing life itself, or it might be, aside from that, a subtle hint at the split in reality. If you put those characters into a hex converter and set the mode to EBCDIC, it reads out V with a space next to it, making it just a V and nothing. Zero. Aside from this, what else can I say that's VR about Death Stranding? Well, there's the instability of the simulation now including a mixed timeline, wormhole technology identical to that of MTSV, the plug that Sam seems to plug into prior to heading out in Trailer 4 looking identical almost to the plug of the Matrix, trying to avoid the chirals, the chandelier in the back pointing to further instability, the supposed supernatural elements such as coming back from the dead. All of this could be simply explained with it all being a virtual simulation gone horribly awry. As suggested by the TombPortable, who has so far made one video that has stood up from the rest, that being the ultimate PT analysis, it seems to me that Death Stranding, similar to PT, is going to be a strange mix of memories from characters throughout the Metal Gear series, particularly all the snakes, the boss, Ocelot, and a few others like Grey Fox. What I think is going to be most interesting is how these characters get explained. There's so many possibilities of what the man in the golden mask could be. Is he one man, or is he a man being possessed by a mask? Is he Ocelot, or is he Ocelot in the mask as a form of symbolism due to his self-induced hypnosis to believe that Liquid's arm would possess him at will? It would also be a reference to the mask, goofily enough. Silent Hill is essentially your personal hell, so is it so far-fetched that he would interpret himself as essentially a symbiotic being? So who is Sam? Everyone seems to think it's Big Boss, but considering that Kojima said that we will all be Norman Reedus, my thought is that Big Boss has been dead for a while now. The Patriot AI system has succeeded in full implementation of the S3 program, and now all life is controlled by being lived in virtual realities. People are put through tests to see if they are Ludens, or those who will rise above normal humans. It is possible that these Ludens are those who control this simulation, and it's likely that they were only selected during this bridge between worlds. Afterward, the rest seem to be trapped in purgatory to atone for their sins, similar to the postman noted in PythonSelkan's Part 3 of their PT as Silent Hill's analysis. Kojima is finally accomplishing his goal of making the character nothing more than a vessel for the player to experience things, effectively putting us into the game on a meta level. We aren't just Sam, but the demon possessing Sam. I think the black oil represents more than just black oil. I personally think it's some kind of programmable matter or oil-like micro-nanomachines. If Death Stranding is a simulation tying the past and present together as one, then the oil would be the blood of that simulation. There are several oddities that point to Death Stranding being a simulation other than what was mentioned. For instance, did you notice the red E on Sam's pack? Didn't think too much of it, did you? What about this? Sony ran an ad campaign back in the earliest days of E3 called the You Are Not Red E campaign, which was a cryptic campaign leading up to the release of the original PlayStation, the 9th of September, explaining E-NOS. This same campaign is being referred to here in the form of this red E. Jeff Keighley tweeted out this tweet. Blown away by the scale and ambition of what Hideo is planning. He knows no limits. We has such a great talk last night. You are not Red E. He tweeted this only a few days ahead of the 15th anniversary of the European release of MGS2, which was February 22nd. I'd say that speaks volumes to the intentions that Kojima is planning for Death Stranding. MGS2 is all about manipulating the audience, manipulating knowledge, and the power of what that looks like. It's just too bad that no one listened back then. It took years of people analyzing the game to finally understand his true motives behind what he did for its release and make that knowledge more mainstream. This ignores the rest of the package, which itself is highly curious. There's a series of numbers and letters, a giant spider, hinting that Kojima was the spider in control as TombPortable alluded to, that appears similar to the FOBs in MGSV, and it's a circuit board. This is one of the two major keys that prove that Death Stranding is all in a computer. Aside from this, I'd also like to note, on the topic of computers particularly, there is a strong black and white theme for Death Stranding. Now think about this. Black is the absence of all color. White is the inclusion of all color. So, if that's the case, that would be a 1 and a 0, all or nothing. It's a binary switch, right? So wouldn't that itself be an allusion to computers? There's two strings of numbers. If you could take the second string underneath the black line and put it in a hex translator, you mostly get garbage, but in 3 forms of hexadecimal, which will be the main ones we're focusing on today, you end up with a V in the middle. In the DOS IBM mode, you find a V with 2 exclamation points after it. This find is thanks to a former mod of NBGO, Sexy Zombie Roo. He has proven invaluable in this effort to decipher the truth within the lies, as he's similar to me in that he's on the fence with the ruse. I'm most certainly seeing the vast possibilities, but I won't be too let down if this all basically ends up just being fanfiction, as I mentioned in the beginning. Kojima was certainly playing with fan expectations because that always was his motive: betray your audience. Besides, whatever Kojima makes, it will be good. The haters don't know Kojima because if they did, they would know it takes far more than a good team to make a good game. It takes good leadership too. Kojima and company have everything they need to make a stellar mindfuck of a story that will last the test of time for decades to come. It surely will get some hate, as some people straight up just don't get art, but I know that Kojima has something massive planned, and we've only seen the very tip of the iceberg. If you've seen the TombPortable's Ultimate PT analysis, you'll possibly remember the inclusion of a comparison between the picture from PT on the hutch and a picture of a much younger Leon Russum, an actor who appeared in the recent film A Quiet Place. In this film, the main characters must remain quiet to avoid being detected by the invisible creatures in the forest. This sounds very similar to the gameplay presented in the 4th Death Stranding trailer, showing Norman clutching his mouth to prevent his breathing from being audible, avoiding invisible creatures. What if I told you Kojima cast another character to look like another real person? Remember this guy? I'll give you a few seconds to guess who he looks like. I'll give you a hint. I spoke heavily about a novel this man wrote. Ding 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 ding, you probably guessed it since there's only a handful of novels, mostly 2. I've mentioned George Orwell, the genius behind 1984. If anything screams that Kojima is making a mirror image of 1984 with his vision, this man being cast is it. Another thing from TombPortable's PT analysis, the part where Lisa throws the window being explained as a PTSD occurrence from the boss as her space shuttle crashed due to one of the people in charge wanting them to add a window to make it more like the Soviet shuttle. This resulted in the crash due to it being aerodynamically unstable with the last-minute addition of the window, a weakened shuttle, as well as the boss being more susceptible to cosmic rays from the sun, and the rest is just history. It doesn't seem like she threw the window at first though. It seems like it just fell from nowhere. Like the simulation just added a window. This, along with the gouge it out metaphor, and the whole section about the flower of life, are all highly important to understand some of the things I'll be referencing, but more importantly, to understand the mystery that is PT. Alright, so this is going to be delving into what I think is going to happen when in Death Stranding, that leads into the creation of the Silent Hill we know and love, and how existing Silent Hill titles can be worked into being virtual reality nightmares. I mentioned in my side op that Death Stranding is going to be the new origin of Silent Hill, and that it's going to result from the termination of the world we once knew and loved as Metal Gear's universe. Kojima seems to be taking Metal Gear Solid 4's conclusion and writing with it, making the world essentially meaningless as everyone lives in virtual space. A good analogy would actually be the recent Ready Player One. These are only light spoilers. While this version is a lot more positive at the ending, the world is still obsessed with VR and often either neglects their lives or sink everything into competitions within this virtual space that equate to real money. This idea comes from the fact that Kojima retweeted this set of pictures that were painted by a Swedish artist by the name of Simon Stålenhag, inspired by a movie he saw as a child. These pictures evoke the paranoid life of living in a world where everything is virtual and everyone is connected non-stop. This seems to be the same concept Kojima is going to explore with Death Stranding, as these characters, or at least Norman Reedus, don't seem to have as many consequences for death. The main consequence in having to live with your actual mistakes, not dying, unless your death results in destruction of course, as seen with the Void Out in Trailer 3. As I discussed in Part 2.5, it seems that Death Stranding is going to be a virtualized interpretation of Dante's Inferno, including Paradise, Purgatory, and Inferno, with Inferno likely having up to, if not more than, 7 major layers. As we know, Silent Hill has a major focus on religion, or at least a cult based on Christianity if it were to go horribly awry, as religion sometimes does. So, while originally and still now it seems that Sam is going to be the protagonist, what if I told you that it actually seems as if Lindsay Wagner will end up being the protagonist? Kojima recently tweeted something that hints that, in fact, he might be pulling an MGS2 and hiding the real playable character from us the whole time. He tweeted this picture of a mask of Norman Reedus sitting next to a figure of the Bionic Woman. Lindsay Wagner played the Bionic Woman, which was Kojima's reason for wanting her on the project. With everything we've said so far, it may be that Kojima was wanting to use that as a connection to MGSV and having Venom Snake be a bionic man. It's also possible that all of the characters will be none other than downloaded consciousness in a virtual construct instead of actual people, and that was what he was alluding to. It becomes even stranger when you look at this recent song that came out on November 28th. only a day prior to the 17th anniversary of MGS2. Grimes, a pop artist whose lyrics normally sound like this, but with this recent single sounding like this. It doesn't seem to me that they were the ones who wrote those lyrics. In fact, it seems to me that Kojima, having recently spent time with her, that it's highly possible that he would have organized a cross-brand deal, as he has been doing with many people, having her make a VR-themed song about submitting to a computer overlord. I don't want to linger long on social media elements, but I do feel the need to mention this as it is coming up and might very well be where the truth is about to be revealed about Death Stranding's true identity and intent as a game. We've seen scant information, much of which has been pieced together from social media, but there's enough in Metal Gear lore to try and make connections. Anyway, Jeff Keighley, who I thought just hosted the Game Awards, actually owns the Game Awards, previously the VGAs, is known to be good friends with Hideo Kojima ever since he got blown away all those years back at E3 with the reveal of the original Metal Gear Solid on PlayStation 1, bringing Metal Gear to the West for the first time in a form directed by Kojima, since we didn't get the MSX2 release despite having a limited release of the system out here. Instead, we just ended up getting the shitty NES version, which was... It is, of course, until Metal Gear Solid 3's Subsistence release and the HD re-release. Anyway, the advertising for the Game Awards has been rather interesting and is focused not only on Kojima, but on themes that appear to be part of Death Stranding's virtual reality. Themes that appear to be part of Death Stranding. Virtual reality, explosions, a dark environment, horror-based stealth. It's really fascinating seeing how Kojima is pulling the strings from behind the scenes, knowing that he collaborated with Jeff for the reveal of the Phantom Pain enigma of Joachim Mogren, just being Kojima. There's also a very interesting song called We Appreciate Power. This seems to be Cypher's Patriot AI to me. So who do I think will be who in the game? I don't think anything's definitive, especially with Kojima's track record of switching things around behind the scenes and only showing us certain things just to betray those expectations, i.e. right in an MGS2. We may very well end up playing as Lindsay Wagner, being portrayed in her younger form by another actress. It would explain the reason behind there being two versions of her, the blue dress and the red dress, the blue potentially being a mirror and a lie, while the red dress in the poster is the reality. That would even satisfy Kojima's desire to make a game where we play as the boss, as that's who she resembles the most. Who knows, the mask might be a red herring, and there might be two versions of Lindsay, as there were two personalities for Virgil 89 in Survive. Dude, we just don't know. I'm pretty certain that the man in the golden mask is Ocelot, potentially possessing his host through the mask as Ocelot was possessed by Liquid. That's speculation for sure, but the idea of him being Ocelot seems fairly sound to me considering Kojima has cast the Japanese VAs for Snake and Ocelot as Sam and the man in the golden mask, which would explain my thought that Sam is a culmination of all the snakes we know with his gruff voice. I had said in the original release that I thought he was Drebin, that I was mixing up characters. Who I really think is Drebin is this unnamed character said to be part of Sam's support team, likely his commanding officer. What if I told you that Drebin was either one of the handlers or who was controlling the simulation, or an anomaly? I think that would explain it fairly well considering that Drebin is just part of the system. Del Toro is likely going to be Kaz, as he is said to have the second most lines in the game next to Sam, hinting at that being who Robin Atkin Downs is going to be playing, an identical mocap gear to the other cast of Death Stranding. Mads is clearly going to play as the Sorrow, as he has control over the dead in this strange land, and has control over the simulation as he did in MGS3. It seems to me in Cypher that these people aren't just normal people, but Ludens. Aliens that appear humanoid, but are actually superior to humans in every way, particularly intellectually. Kojima wanted us, the players of his game, to be those Ludens, to solve these puzzles he's set up before the game even comes out. So why have I been bringing up the Matrix this whole time? Well, Kojima seems to not only be trying to make his version of 1984, but remix it into the Matrix, as this seems to be his view of where the world is going. A world where society as we know it will no longer be a real society, but a digital society, where we're all plugged into a supercomputer that rules our lives. Not only has he built in many subtle cues to virtual reality in his series, but he's been on Twitter sharing things that are both constantly referencing virtual reality and directly referencing the Matrix. Check out this picture he posted of himself holding a landline, with it for some reason plugged in outside. Now check out this picture of Mads Mikkelsen holding a similar phone that a fan paired up the picture of Kojima with on Twitter, which Kojima then retweeted. Phones in the Matrix are vital to understanding how the system works, because if you know how they work, you know how to communicate and how to get out. Cell phones in most landlines are just used for communicating, but payphones are used to be able to exit the Matrix and re-enter your body. It seems to me that Kojima is hinting at his connections. Yes, we've known Mads has been involved with this for some time, but this is a thematic thing to do. Aside from this, as I mentioned, Dr. Madnar might actually be the one who created the simulation, with Copplethorne stealing the source code and naming it after himself, just as Huey stole Granon's concept for Metal Gear. If this is the case, that would likely make him the architect of the simulation, as he was already rather old in Metal Gear 2, 1995. MGS4 was in 2014. He appeared to be at least 70 in 95, so he'd be in his 90s by MGS4. Unless he never aged because it's a simulation and he controls it all. There's more though. Check out this clip of Conan Without Borders, a new series Conan is doing where he goes around the world to appreciate different cultures and meet creators such as, you guessed it, Hideo Kojima. In this Q&A, he says a few things that are very strange and kind of suspicious.
Where's the Kojima video? That's going to be released later, but we did visit Kojima Studios. It was very cool. A lot of top secret stuff there.
Yeah, we have to be a little delicate with the timing of that.
Yes.
Because they were incredibly nice to us.
Yes.
And he's an incredibly cool guy.
Very
and
cool.
obviously brilliant.
Yeah.
And he did ask, could we release that closer to when possibly they're getting ready to do their thing, and we wanted to respect that.
Absolutely.
So
we can disclose they're creating the entire game in one laptop.
Yeah, it's a giant room with just one.
It's a giant room, one laptop, and oddly, a laptop from 1998.
Yeah, that's how they like to work.
Got a lot of stickers.
He joked that the game was being made on a single laptop from 1998, to which Kojima responded a day later with a tweet from him holding a laptop with Metal Gear Solid 1 running on it. Could this indeed be Kojima saying that Death Stranding is not only going to be in virtual reality, but be based in the Metal Gear lore? I think it's highly viable evidence myself, but I know I'm digging deep, so. There's also the line from the man in the golden mask, who I'm theorizing to be an unnamed Drebin wielding the spirit of Ocelot in a mask. We can always tweak the rules a little.
This is a sparring program, similar to the programmed reality of the Matrix.
It has the same basic rules like gravity. What you must learn is that these rules are no different than the rules of a computer system. Some of them can be bent. Others can be broken.
He is known for saying that he's an ocelot with the pride of a lion. Wouldn't you say that this chimera creature resembles a lion, especially with its roar? So with all this said, where do I stand? I think exactly what I said, that Kojima appears to be utilizing the subtle cues that he has laid before himself in order to strengthen the context of MGS2 in the modern age. With that said, I won't be disappointed if it's only in themes and design elements that Death Stranding is the continuation of his plans for Silent Hill, as it clearly is in the very least the spiritual successor to what PT was teasing with those paintings to nail that in.
You'll never be the same, Jack.
Where am I?
Where's that X-ray? Got it right here, Doctor. Get it up on the board, quickly. Initiate data recovery from the arm.
I'm on it.
Got several circuits in the arm. We're patching replacement memory units into your nervous system. You may become disoriented. Don't worry, don't worry, don't worry.
Data stream is connected.
Get me a clamp here. He's losing a lot of blood. Stay with me now. We're gonna talk to me.
You'll never be the same, Jack. He's a fighter. I like fighters. You hurt him. I'll kill you.
He'll survive.
Go about your business.
No! Don't!
After this, you'll never be the same, Jack.
You will follow orders, little soldier.
He's stable. Prepare the optical implant.
What happened to me? My eye. I can't see.
Optical nerve is completely destroyed.
Start the procedure.
Get his optical receptors ready, doctors.
Done.
Moving the eye now.
How does he look?
This eye's a mess.
Jack, keep your eyes on the screen.
Your watch.
See your new world, Jack.
Be strong. Watch.
Jack the Ripper.
Don't be angry, soldier.
Accessing nervous system control panel.
Who's there?
You can't come in here.
Come closer.
He's not ready.
Where is he?
The upgrade is complete.
Systems are online.
You gave them our position. You told them our military strength. You told them where we are. You told them information. No. You will tell us or we will kill your family. Please, your wife. No, your wife. I will take my time. No, turn to stop. Turn to stop. You do not make your own decisions. You are mine.
Jack! Don't look away, boy. This is your future. It's a beauty, isn't it? There's honor in a blade, Jack. You see, anyone can pull a trigger. Point. Shoot. He's dead. But a blade. Pressing that cold metal against another man's throat. Feeling his pulse. It's personal. It's intimate. There's honor in killing with a blade. This is your future, Jack.
I owe you for that speech you wrote. It did wonders for my approval ratings. You understand what matters. Filters, information control, none of that matters anymore. People these days don't care about what's right or wrong. It's all about the spin. How well you can shift blame to the other guy. People these days see only what they want to see. Don't tell me you're still on about that grand jury nonsense. They've got nothing that connects me to Desperado. Besides, the average Joe doesn't give a shit either way. People these days think money is the solution to all their problems. We need to bring back the greatness of good old America. Reclaim the American dream. To do that, we need to make sacrifices. That's what those pansies in the so-called Tea Party don't seem to realize. This is a revolution, my friend. We are the true sons of liberty. Anyway, I gotta run. We'll talk soon.
That's it for this video. I'm going to make part 4 if December 6th proves to be fruitful for information regarding Death Stranding. And with all the teasing that Jeff Keighley and Koji Pro have been doing, I'd say we're in for one wild fucking ride. Thank you to everybody who helped me with this. Cypher, Rue, Parkadoxer, Chef Umaril, Lolly Lulelo being a newer addition to the crew, and all of you for your outstanding ideas and your support of the series. It really does mean the world to me that so many of you appreciate what I'm doing. My goal is not only to potentially uncover the mystery behind Death Stranding, but also to shed light on serious world issues, such as censorship of public knowledge by artificial intelligence being on the rise, i.e. YouTube, Facebook, Google, etc., political corruption, nuclear war, and generally just shed light on these things in an interesting way to make these topics more known and more relatable. That was, after all, Kojima's goal with Metal Gear Solid, was to raise awareness of these issues. Depending on what we see on the 6th, I'll be continuing in part 4, where I go over even more elements of social media, dig deeper into the things I touched on in my side op, and cover things I missed in part 2 regarding Low Roar and Oat Studios. Anyway, that's it for this video. Thank you all so much for watching and subscribing. I'm really close to hitting 1,000 subscribers, which will mean that I'll be eligible for advertisements in that way, but I potentially already am with the last 12 months of watch time. The channel will be shifting focus after this series is complete, but there will always be my secondary channel for more frequent content in the form of me just playing games with friends and my Steam controller series. I hope to see you there. If you'd like to support me in the meantime, Consider becoming a patron for only $1 for behind-the-scenes access. If I get to my first goal of $500,